Scientists sound the alarm over a troubling phenomenon, forcing them to actually rethink everything. Predictability has become more of a challenge. I think that our infidel 64 has a story. Infidel?
Thanks, Cynthia. And as extreme weather events become increasingly unpredictable, researchers struggle to adjust their climate models to keep up with the rising impact of climate change. From shifting ocean currents to unprecedented flooding, the increased volatility of weather is making it difficult to prepare for natural disasters that are hitting vulnerable communities around the world. In this chaotic climate environment, the focus on research and preparedness have never been more critical. However, the very systems meant to protect us are under threat. Budget cuts and political pressure to reduce climate research funding are weakening the infrastructures needed to monitor and address these growing risks. For decades, powerful corporations have ignored climate change. They've also spread information, undermined scientific consensus, all in the name of profit. We now find ourselves in a precarious situation facing climate uncertainty with weakened scientific institutions that should be guiding us towards solutions. The pursuit of corporate profits have led us to this point where the future of both the planet and its people hang in the balance. Or, as Malcolm X once said at the assassination of JFK, the chickens are coming home to roost. Now, these stories, I don't remember where they came from, but I'm sure that Cynthia will be more than happy to tell me where they did. Cynthia?
If I knew.
Well,
it came from The Cool Down by Chelsea
The Cool
Cook
Down.
on February
Chelsea
14, 2025.
Thank you, AJ. Yes,
Thank
The
you,
Cool
AJ.
Down by Chelsea Cook on February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2025. So, Glenn, since you went ahead and introduced the story to us, I'm going to have the first question come to you. So, if climate models are becoming less reliable, what should policymakers prioritize to prepare for unpredictable extremes in weather?
Well, I think the first mistake is to say that the people in charge now would want to prepare for anything. I think that pretty much what we're seeing is a reactionary, let somebody else worry about it. We're not. Now, of course, now is a time where we should be increasing funding and focusing on understanding these extreme weather events because they're going to become more significant, not less. And we see that, and we've continued to see that. But we're going to see this reduction. As I like to look at it, I think of it as a imperfect storm of corporate interest and policy. Right now we're seeing a lot of implementation of Project 2025, and it's that storm inside of another storm where they're once again, as I mentioned earlier, they're essentially putting corporate profits over actual research into climate change because they're driven and motivated by people who quite literally have the opposite desire. That's what their goal is.
Word to your mother, Glenn. I completely are down with what you're putting down. Okay. It's just kind of funny. Like when you think about the recent terminations of federal employees that are civil servants and they serve in these different agencies that actually, I don't know, do the work on predictability when it comes to climate, it makes no sense to get rid of them. Because then if you're going to get rid of the people who are actually qualified to do the work, how in the hell will we have the data go into the future and how for us to quell these particular issues? But I digress. That's like what my dad used to say. You guys know what my dad used to say?
I don't know.
No.
What did he say?
He used to say, Cindy, that's my pet name, by the way, if you didn't know. Cindy, that's too much like right. So, Aaron, I want to ask you, how could researchers balance the urgency of solutions like geoengineering with the risk of unintended consequences?
What do you mean? What kind of unintended consequences?
Well, we had Glenn introduced the story where we were talking about how, like, some of the models that, previous climate experts had are not as reliable as they used to be, right? And so now it's to the point where I don't necessarily think that it's this hatchet, but you have, some of our experts still kind of just like, throwing caution to the wind to try to come up with what type of strategy in order for them to battle such things. But if it's not based on a model where it has a more predictable, sense where we can, be comfortable, there may be some unintended consequences that come with some of the, policies that we come up with just based on observation alone. So how do we quell that? How do we, look at like, hey, we really, really need to do something and balance it with, but there could be a consequence for what we do.
I'm sorry. I'm still not quite sure I understand your question.
Aaron, I eloquently laid out to you.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it was PBS like light. You know what I'm saying? The way Glenn, I'm gonna come to you for my
brain is not connecting these dots. I'm so sorry.
It's okay, Glenn. Based on what I asked Aaron, if you want to go ahead and pontificate, that's great. And then Aaron, I want you to listen to his answer, and I want you to counter if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First, I'm pretty sure
Ken Burns moment, Aaron.
So sorry.
I'm pretty sure that I heard.
It was
pretty
really
sure
good,
that I heard.
Cynthia. I'm so sorry.
Oh, God damn. I felt Morgan Freeman talking and everything. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure I heard PBS music playing in the background at least at some point there. But
It
seriously,
was.
though, I think that what Cynthia's talking about, and I may be wrong, is the fact that because funding is going to be so inadequate and our current models are so incomplete that it almost puts us in a paralysis mode, because if we start acting upon incomplete data, there could be unexpected consequences that result from that, because our models are broken. And our models are broken because we're accelerating at such a rate, and we've continued to underfund this aspect of climate research anyway.
I think I know why I'm so confused. Because there's fucking nothing we can do.
That's
why I'm confused by your question. Because I'm not a meteorologist. I don't play one on TV. I don't play one on the movies. I don't know any. Like, the only thing we can do is elect government officials that understand that scientists are bipartisan. That by their very nature, they just go where the data goes. They study what weather is doing. They come up with models, and I have to say that the weather models that they've come up to the past 40 years of my life have been extraordinary. What they can predict and how far ahead they can predict it nowadays is pretty amazing, right? And if we're gonna cut funding on people coming up with new models to match what's happening to our climate, yeah, we're fucked. There's nothing we can do. I can't hire meteorologists, right? All we can do is elect people that believe in climate change, that believe that science is nonpartisan issues, that what the data says is what the data says. Elect people that don't change weather maps to include affected areas that weren't actually affected. As far as I'm concerned, taking care of the planet is good for everybody, right? Who doesn't want clean air? Who doesn't want clean water? Who doesn't want to know where a hurricane's going to hit so they can get the heck out of Dodge? Who doesn't want to be protected? Who doesn't want to make sure that our natural resources are sustainable and that they're always available and always useful for us? It's just the partisan portion of climate change it flabbergasts me. Does that answer your question, Cynthia?
Yes, and I'm going to agree with one thing you said, Aaron.
Go ahead, Glenn, and then I have to say what I have to say.
Is the fact that you're right. There's nothing we can do right now, because the bottom line is the group of people that are in power right now are going to make this situation worse, because you ask who doesn't care? There are people in this country who value profit over the long-term well-being of the planet for themselves, for their children, for their grandchildren. And they're showing that. They're demonstrating that. So what can we do right now? We're behind the 8 ball. We're already behind on climate change, and we're going to get further behind. That's what's going to happen. Now, what are the ramifications of this? Well, of course, vulnerable communities are going to be at risk. We're seeing Project 2025, and I hate to bring it up again, but it really pervades everything that's going on now. And we're seeing them work to cut these very programs. So until we get the people who have Project 2025 in their brains out of our government, we're not going to impact it at all.
Aaron, I'm very disappointed because I feel that you have not gotten your fill on nature documentaries on PBS, and that really shames me. So when you leave this recording, I need you to catch up. And start with The March of the Penguins, narrated by Morgan Freeman.
I will watch anything narrated by Morgan Freeman.
I know. I know. He has that voice like, the penguins are walking down the tundra or whatever the hell he says. I don't know. It's been a while since I watched that. AJ, let me bring you into the conversation.
I'm just listening. I'm just an spectator over here.
No. We don't want you just to be, somebody that's actually just like looking. I want you to participate too. So I think that Glenn and Aaron kind of touched on this a little bit, but like if you want to add a bit more to the discourse, I really would appreciate it.
Probably.
What role should governments play in funding climate research? I mean, like one of the things that we saw immediately on day one is that, the Trump administration recoiled from the Paris climate accords. After Biden put us back in the Paris climate accords. And we are pushing, and we have taken down actual data that has been collected by, geologists and other climate experts that really talked about, weather patterns, the changes in how it's affecting us as an electorate from, the White House websites. So with that being said, what should our government play? What role should the government play in actually funding this research, especially when proposing cuts, which we see so much right now, while others are increasing investment?
I think they should play a key role in funding this type of research. It's like a basic thing that they can do for the American people. Okay, as we said earlier, we need protections to be able to know if a hurricane is coming, if any type of natural disaster is coming. You want to have the federal government on your side funding research that is bipartisan, that is not just one side or the other. And that's what scientists do. They get into the neutral of it, and they follow the data, they follow the facts. They're not like, oh hey, let's go make this hurricane democratic, right? So, but the problem that we're seeing now, as Infidel stated, is Project 2025. Their targets seem to be as far as climate, okay, and the weather services. They've been targeting NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They plan to privatize it so that it only provides data to private companies. Again, all about the profits, right? So it calls for the Project 2025 ideas about global warming and climate change and weather patterns calls for reviewing things like the work of the National Hurricane Center, asking that they remain more neutral with their communications and that they no longer make points about climate change being a factor in like increasing strength and number of hurricanes and such things. And of course, the plan includes disbanding research about climate change specifically, which is a shocker. So when at this point we have our government completely failing to protect the American people from the threat of global warming and climate change. That's when people have to take it upon themselves to make some changes to try to help the situation. We may not be, meteorologists or be able to do anything about the science behind it, but we can do things. People need to realize that unless they give a fuck about climate change and keep talking about it, then nothing will get done from the top down otherwise, right? I think that people believe that their individual impact is never going to be enough. But if we look at other efforts, like, I don't know, like there is strength in numbers. If you look at the protests that have been going around these days, right? Like we have one person and that person brings somebody and that other person brings somebody, then you're going to have a pile of people, right? You're going to have a chain of people. So what people can do to make a difference as far as global warming, and I understand that some people are more privileged than others and that, not everybody can afford to do all of the things. But if you can afford to do one of the things, then do that one thing, all right? Like choose green energy. Like if you can afford, I don't know, changing your vehicle or putting solar panels. Obviously, that's like a really big ticket one. I don't know, carpooling, switch your light bulbs, recycle. Watch what kind of packaging you buy items in. If you can bring your reusable bag to the store, bring it. You can make one with a piece of fabric, right? And prevent a lot of waste of plastic bags. Use paper straws, whatever. Incorporate more plant-based foods into your diet. Like all of these little things add up. And like I said, I can't personally do all of these things. And I do the ones that are feasible for me. But imagine if every single person cared enough to do one or two of these things. We could make an impact.
It's like crazy to me. And I hear what you're saying. Like, as an electorate, we can, take some type of personal accountability in order for us to be able to reduce our carbon footprint because we care about our environment. But, if we want to keep it a buck, if we really want to keep it like, all the way 100, we know that, the majority of the issues that we're having concerning climate change, waste, and even like when it comes to environmental issues, when it comes to even like gross negligence on how we treat our the environment around us, it's mostly a corporate issue. Yeah. And unfortunately, as much as like I want to eat as many avocados as possible in my diet, because that's nature's butter versus butter. I still understand that unless we actually have like more corporations buying into, hey, you need to take more accountability on how you actually are participating as a global neighbor in what you do as far as like practices are concerned, then we're going to really have like a problem, because like the main people who are doing the waste is not being held accountable, nor are they really, buying into making changes the way that they ought to in order to stop waste. And I find it extremely problematic that the very agency that has dedicated its mission to understanding and predicting Earth's climate change is being told not to report on Earth's climate change. I mean, that's insane to me. But unfortunately, we're in bizarro Earth, guys, and I don't know. I understand, like there's like all these. I don't know how many Earths are in like the DC world. Is it like 10, or is it infinite, or does anybody know?
Crisis on Infinite Earths. Crisis on Infinite Earths.
An infinite Earth, right? Infinite, right? The squiggly line with the 8 that's on his side. What the hell? Oh my god, it's crazy. But guys, I was supposed like this last question. I'm just going to go ahead and just do a round robin. I would like for all of you all to kind of just like chime in if you don't mind. And I think that AJ, you touched on this, so I'm going to go to Aaron and Glenn for this.
Sure.
How can individuals and communities adapt to extreme weather patterns without solely relying on uncertain scientific predictions. Aaron, I want you to start, and then Glenn, I want you to follow up, please.
Oh gosh, I don't know. That's tough. I would say just to listen to the scientists, listen to the experts, find people that understand. Because I don't know. I literally don't know enough to answer that question. So I would seek out scientists and people that do understand on what we can do to prepare and get ready for and handle these events. Because from what I understand, they're not going to go away. They're going to keep happening. They're going to increase in frequency. They're going to increase in severity. We have a problem. Climate change is a problem, and as long as we don't recognize it as a problem and try to solve it, it's just going to get worse.
Well, I've got to say that the solution's really easy depending on which side you're on, because one side, their solution is profit over people, because that's what we're seeing demonstrated. So what's going to happen to those people? Well, some of them are going to die. Some of them are going to be financially disadvantaged. Many of them are going to end up relocating, because there are things that are going to continue to happen. And the more we ignore this problem, the faster we have this runaway ball just going down straight towards us with the bullseye painted right on us. And their solution is, well, you know what? If we close our eyes really tight and don't say anything about climate change, we don't have a problem. You know, it's like I heard someone mention today, it's a person I actually frequent a chat room with. And he's like, you know, when you come down to saying there's not a problem, he says, if you have a guy jumping out of an 8-story building for 7 floors, you're going to go, nope, no problem here. Everything's fine. Everything's good. But eventually you hit the ground. And that's what we're facing. We're heading full speed into the ground. And they're wanting to say, okay, well, floor 6, 7, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 said no problem. So we're good. And it's having to force people to address that, because until this group that's promoting this Project 2025 slash and dash mentality, while I agree with AJ that there are things that we can do and should do, just because we should be responsible adults, and being responsible means not just shitting around the whole world around you, but beyond those, this is a situation that's going to require people who do not have our best interests at heart of being taken out of their position. Because the bottom line is, as long as the people who want Project 2025 are in office, and they're the ones who are doing these cabinet positions and all these positions that are doing harm to us, we're along for the ride. So all we can do is floor 7, floor 6, floor 5, floor 4, because they're not going to tell us anymore what's coming, but it's obvious to anyone paying attention.
Guys, we are in an era where officials who are touted as experts are looking at issues like climate change as no biggie. And unfortunately, the ones who are affected the most by it see the problem, but we're choked because the people who really need to recognize it and do something about it are inept. But I would invite you, dear viewer, who is not inept, that if you want to actually watch more nonprofit content, click here.